My brother called on a Tuesday afternoon, which was already strange. He never calls on Tuesdays. He texts, usually something stupid like a meme or a one-line question about what mom made for Christmas. So when my phone lit up with his name at 2:17 inches the afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in 4 months. I walked to the bathroom, turned on the shower, sat down on the edge of the tub, and answered in a whisper. Hey. Hey yourself. Why are you whispering? I looked at the gap under the bathroom door. No shadow. No footsteps. I can't really talk right now. There was a pause. Claire. Where are you? Bathroom. The shower's on. Another pause. Longer this time. Why do you need the shower on to talk to me? I didn't answer that. I couldn't. The words were right there in my chest, but they had nowhere to go because I had forgotten, somewhere over the last year and a half, how to say true things out loud. I just sat there on the edge of that tub with the steam rising around me, gripping the phone, and my brother, being my brother, understood something was wrong in the silence alone. I'm coming this weekend, he said. Not a question. You don't have to, Claire. His voice was steady. The kind of steady that means the conversation is already decided. I'm coming Saturday. Text me your address. I almost didn't. I sat with my thumb over the keyboard for a long time after we hung up, listening to the shower run, listening for footsteps in the hall. Then I typed the address and hit send before I could think too hard about what I was doing. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. I genuinely want to know who's part of this community. I need to back up. Because if I just tell you what happened on Saturday, none of it will make sense. You'll hear the surface and miss the whole thing underneath. And the thing underneath is the part that matters, because the thing underneath is the part that almost killed me, not with violence, but with something slower than that. Something patient. Something that knew exactly what it was doing. I married my husband Daniel 2.5 years ago. He was the kind of man who remembered things. The way I took my coffee. The name of the teacher I'd complained about in the 3rd grade. The specific song that was playing the night we met. People said things like he's so attentive and you can really tell he loves you, and I believed them, because attention that precise felt like love. It took me a long time to understand that a person can pay very close attention to you for reasons that have nothing to do with love. His mother, Sandra, came with the package. She drove up from Savannah for the wedding and never fully left. Not literally, she had her own house, 40 minutes away, but she had a way of being present that didn't require a physical body. She called Daniel every morning at 7:45, without fail. She had opinions about the furniture I chose and the way I folded towels and whether I was getting enough sleep. She delivered those opinions softly, in the register of concern, wrapped in casseroles and follow-up texts. I just worry, she would say. I just want what's best for you both. I thought I could manage it. I thought Daniel and I were a team. And teams figure these things out. What I didn't understand yet was that Daniel and Sandra had been a team for 34 years before I showed up, and the architecture of that team left no room for a third person who disagreed. It started with my job. I was a dental hygienist. Good hours, decent money, something that was mine. 8 months into our marriage, Sandra started having what she called episodes. Anxiety, she said. Chest tightening. She needed someone she trusted nearby. Daniel worked in commercial insurance, couldn't rearrange his schedule. Couldn't she just call Claire? It would mean so much. It would just be temporary. I took 3 weeks off. Then 6. Then Daniel suggested, gently, rationally, in the voice he used when a thing was already decided, that maybe it made more sense for me to leave the practice entirely. Sandra needed consistency. I was already home so often. What was the point of paying for childcare? We weren't even pregnant yet, when eventually we would need me available. It was just practical. It was just math. I gave notice the following month. I told myself it was my choice. The finances came next. Daniel was good with numbers, he said. It was his thing. He set up a joint account and moved our money into it, but the card that accessed the full balance was his. What he gave me was a secondary card with a monthly limit. For household expenses. For what I needed. This just makes it easier, he said. You don't want to deal with all those transfers and statements, do you? Let me handle it. And I was tired, so I said, okay. I said thank you. I didn't notice, at first, that what I could access was getting smaller. Not all at once. 1 month the limit was $1,200. Then $900. Then $7. There was always a reason. A medical bill. A car repair. We're just being careful, Daniel would say. You know how things are. I didn't know how things were. I no longer had access to find out. By the time my daughter Lily was 4 months old, Sandra had a key to our house. She'd gotten it for what she called a safety reason. What if something happened to me while Daniel was at work? What if there was an emergency? I handed over the key. What kind of mother wouldn't want a backup plan? She started using it without calling first. I'd be nursing in the living room and hear the front door. I'd be asleep during Lily's nap and wake up to find Sandra in my kitchen, reorganizing my cabinets, leaving a note about where she'd moved things. Once I came downstairs at 6 in the morning and she was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee she'd made from my machine in my kitchen in my house. And she looked at me like I was the one out of place. When I told Daniel, he said I was being hormonal. He said Sandra was trying to help. He said I needed to rest more and maybe talk to someone because I was clearly struggling with the adjustment of motherhood, and it wasn't fair to take that out on his mother. He said it the way doctors say things. The way people say things when they've already decided the problem is you. I went quiet after that. Not because I agreed. Because I learned that speaking used up energy and never changed anything, and I had very little energy left. The last straw, the one that broke something open instead of breaking me down, was a Thursday in October. Daniel had taken my car keys the night before. He said I'd seemed scattered lately, that Lily's sleep schedule had me exhausted, that I had almost run a red light last week and he was worried. He said he'd drive us wherever we needed to go. He said it like he was doing me a favor. The next morning, he left for work at 8. Sandra came at 8:45, before I'd even made breakfast. She took Lily from my arms, the way people take jackets, automatically, without asking. She said I looked like I needed a shower, like she was diagnosing me. I went upstairs. I stood in the bathroom with the water running and I looked at myself in the mirror above the sink for a long time. I didn't recognize what I was looking at. Not the face. Not the eyes. Not the thing behind the eyes that used to know what it wanted. My phone was on the counter. Daniel had stopped reading my messages about 2 months ago or so, I thought. I'd later find out he checked it every night after I fell asleep. But that morning, with the water running and Sandra one floor below me with my daughter, I picked it up and I called my brother. And then Saturday came. I didn't tell Daniel my brother was coming. I said a friend from the old practice was stopping by to drop something off. He said that was fine. He was playing golf with a client, he'd be back by 4. Sandra was not there that morning, which felt like luck, but was probably just coincidence. I put Lily in her bouncer by the window, and I sat on the couch and waited. My brother knocked at 11:03. I know because I watched the clock for the last 20 minutes straight. He walked in, looked at the house, looked at me, and didn't say anything for a moment. He had driven 6 hours from where he lived in Raleigh. I could see the crease from the seatbelt still on his shirt. He hugged me and I felt something crack open in my sternum, the way ice breaks when the temperature finally changes, not all at once but in long, irreversible lines. How long? He asked. He was looking at me the same way I'd looked at myself in the mirror. Like he was taking inventory. Long enough, I said. He sat down. He asked me to start from the beginning. And so I did. I told him about the job. The card with the limit. The key Sandra had made without asking. The way Daniel explained my own feelings back to me in a language I didn't recognize. The morning with the car keys. All of it. My brother is not a dramatic person. He does not raise his voice. He sat through the whole thing with his elbows on his knees and his eyes on me, and when I finished, he was quiet for a minute. Then he said, "Claire, you know this is abuse, right? Like, this is the actual definition." I started to say something about how it wasn't like that, how Daniel wasn't a bad person, how Sandra meant well, and I got about 2 sentences in before I heard myself. I heard the words coming out of my mouth, all the soft, cushioned, carefully maintained explanations I had built over 18 months to make my own situation livable, and I stopped. Because hearing them out loud, in a quiet living room, to someone who loved me, and was not inside the system, they sounded insane. "I know," I said. "I know what it is." He nodded. "Okay. So we're not here to talk about whether it's bad enough to matter. We're here to talk about what happens next." He looked around the room. "Do you have your documents? Passport? Social security card? Lily's birth certificate?" I had to think about that. I went upstairs and checked the filing cabinet in the office, the one Daniel kept locked. But I knew where the key was, because Sandra had asked me to retrieve something from it months ago, and I'd paid attention. I found my passport. Lily's birth certificate. The deed to the car I'd had before we married, which was still technically in my name. I brought everything to the kitchen table and spread it out. My brother looked through the papers quietly. Then he said, "There's something else we need to look at." I didn't know what he meant until he asked me to log into the joint bank account. I typed in the password. It worked. $1,243. For what was supposed to be a shared account between 2 adults with 2 incomes. "Where did your income go?" my brother asked. "You worked for years before this." "I had savings," I said. "I had about $30,000 from before we married. I moved it into the joint account because Daniel said it made sense." My brother's face didn't change. It just went very still. "When?" "About a year ago. And now there's $1,200 in here." "Yes." He asked me to check my credit. I pulled up the app I hadn't opened in 9 months because Daniel had said I was obsessive about checking it and it was causing me unnecessary anxiety. There was a personal loan I didn't recognize. $18,000. Opened 11 months ago, in my name, with an address I'd never lived at. The payments were current. Someone was servicing the debt using money I didn't know I had. Money that wasn't supposed to be traceable to anything. I sat down very slowly. "He took out a loan in your name," my brother said. He was calm, the The way people who are very angry get calm. And you're 30,000. I thought the account. We're going to figure out exactly what happened. But first, I need you to think about something. He turned to look at me. If you had known a year ago that this is where it was going, would you have stayed? No, I said, without thinking. And then I stopped, because the speed of my own answer shocked me. No, I said again, quieter this time. I know, he said. He called his girlfriend, who was a paralegal. She talked me through what to pull, what to screenshot, what to document. I opened the filing cabinet again. I found loan statements. I found a credit card in my name I had never activated, with a balance of $6,000. I found a transfer record of $22,000, moved from the joint account to a separate account 11 months ago. Daniel's name only. I was sitting at my own kitchen table, looking at the paper trail of my own destruction. What I did next is the part people don't expect. Because I could have put everything back. I could have locked the cabinet, gone upstairs, and pretended I'd spent the morning watching TV. There was still a part of my brain whispering that if I just stayed quiet, if I just tried harder, things would get better. That voice had been the dominant one for a long time. But under it, for the past 4 months, I had been doing something else. Something slow and careful and almost invisible, the way you don't yank a stuck window because yanking breaks it. You ease it. You work the frame a little at a time. I had been saving screenshots. Every time Daniel left his laptop open, I photographed the screen. Bank transfers. Emails between him and Sandra about the loan. A message where Sandra wrote, "She won't question it if you make her feel like questioning is the problem." Text threads where they discussed my instability in quotes, like a word they'd agreed to perform. I had a folder in a cloud account. Daniel didn't know I had. Created using the library's Wi-Fi on a day I'd told him I was taking Lily to the park. 217 screenshots over 4 months. I had named the folder Lily's first year. I had never looked at it twice in a row, so there would be no pattern in my phone's browsing history. I showed my brother. He looked at the folder for a long moment. Then he looked at me. "You already knew," he said. "I knew I needed to leave," I said. "I just needed someone on the outside to make sure Lily and I actually made it out." He nodded very slowly. "I'm here," he said. "Let's go." I packed in 11 minutes. I know because my brother timed it, standing in the doorway of the bedroom watching the hall. I didn't fold. I moved. Lily's things, my things, the folder of documents, the cloud login written on a piece of paper inside Lily's board book because no one checks inside Lily's board books. I grabbed Lily from the bouncer, buckled her into the car seat my brother had brought because he had thought of that. Had thought of all the things he needed to think of before he drove 6 hours. And I walked out the front door of that house at 12:40. 4 inches the afternoon. I did not look at the kitchen where I had learned to eat standing up because Sandra sat in my chair. I did not look at the window where I had watched Daniel's car pull away every morning and felt the complicated, shameful relief of him being gone. I walked through the door and into the sunlight and I buckled my daughter's carrier and I got in the passenger seat and I exhaled for what felt like the first time in a year and a half. Daniel got home at 4 and found an empty house. He called 4 times. I didn't answer. He called my mother, who didn't know where I was. He called my brother, who answered and said, calmly, that I was safe and would be in touch through a lawyer. Daniel said he was calling the police. My brother told him to go ahead and said he looked forward to explaining the loan documentation and forged credit application to them. Daniel hung up. Sandra texted me 17 times that night. The first few were concerned, motherly, "What happened? I'm so worried." The later ones dropped the performance. The last one said, "You're making a mistake you can't take back." I screenshotted it and added it to the folder. The divorce attorney my brother found had me in her office Monday morning. She looked at the documentation for 40 minutes without speaking. Then she said, "He wasn't just controlling you. This is financial fraud. We're filing a police report today, along with the divorce petition." She had a way of saying things that made them feel inevitable, like facts that had always existed and just needed to be named. The police report was filed. The loan in my name was flagged. Daniel's attorney called mine within a week, and the tone of that call, my attorney told me later, was the tone of someone realizing the hole they dug had a different shape than they planned. Here's what the next 4 months looked like, not a movie. Not clean. Not satisfying in the way revenge looks from the outside. It was paperwork and hearings and days when Lily cried and I didn't have enough sleep to think straight and I cried in the bathroom the way I used to cry in the bathroom, except now no one was listening at the door. But Lily and I were in my brother's spare room, and the door had a lock, and the lock was mine. The financial recovery took time. The $18,000 loan was linked to fraud documentation sufficient to remove it from my credit. $22,000 of the $30,000 I'd moved into the joint account was recovered through the divorce settlement, along with half the value of the house we'd shared. My attorney was thorough in ways that still feel miraculous to me, though I know it was just competence, the rare kind. Daniel pled to a reduced charge. Not nothing, but not everything I'd wanted. Sandra was named in the civil proceedings. She did not walk away clean. Which was the thing I had needed more than I fully understood until it happened. 9 months after I walked out that front door, I am sitting in an apartment in a city I chose myself. It is a modest apartment. It has a window that faces east and gets good light in the morning. And Lily and I eat breakfast in that light. And she bangs her spoon on the tray of her high chair. And the sound of it is the best sound I have heard in years. I went back to work 6 weeks ago. Part-time, at a practice with good people. My hands remembered what to do faster than I expected. It turns out, things you learn deep enough don't actually disappear, even when someone spends a long time insisting they do. I want to tell you something before I go, because it's the thing I wish someone had said to me when I was still sitting on the edge of that tub with the shower running. The control doesn't always look like a locked door. Sometimes it looks like a casserole. Sometimes it looks like let me handle the finances, you're already so tired. Sometimes it looks like someone paying very close attention to you and calling that attention love. The heat goes up 1 degree at a time, and by the time the water is boiling, you've been in it so long you've forgotten what room temperature felt like. If you're in that water right now, I'm not going to tell you it's easy to get out. I'm going to tell you the truth, which is that you get out the way I did, carefully, quietly, one screenshot at a time, and then one ordinary Tuesday, when someone who loves you calls for no reason, and you walk to the bathroom and turn on the shower and finally say the true thing out loud. You don't yank the chain, you pick the lock while they're sleeping, and then you walk out the front door in the middle of the afternoon, and you don't look back, and the air outside tastes like something you almost forgot existed. I wasn't grateful for the cage. I was never grateful for the cage. I was just waiting for the door.